Tom Price's use of government planes, over $1 million worth, got plenty of well-deserved attention. But it may not be the most glaring example of government corruption this week. According to a remarkable new report from Politico, congressional aides routinely engage in insider trading, buying and selling stock in companies their committees have the ability to regulate and investigate, and timing those investments around the legislation, which is unbelievable. It's obviously an illegal conflict of interest in the executive branch. If you or I tried it, we'd be in jail, but for some reason they get away with it. Why is that? Peter Schweizer knows a lot about this subject. He's written about it for years. He's the president of the Government Accountability Institute. He wrote the book Clinton Cash. And he's written on this exact thing before, and that's, Peter, you were the first person I thought of when I read this piece, and I thought, Peter Schweizer kind of showed this to the world 3 or 4 or 5 years ago, and I thought it got shut down after your book. But no, why?
Yeah, a lot of us thought it was going to get shot down. When my book came out in 2011, they passed something called the Stock Act, which was supposed to regulate this activity, but it hasn't. They've gutted the bill. And so essentially you have a system, Tucker, where the only place in America, there's this island in Washington, D.C., that allows people trade stocks where they have a vested outcome or influence on the outcome. If you're a judge, you can't trade stock on cases you're dealing with. If you're a reporter, a journalist covering Wall Street, you can't trade stock in those areas. The only place you can do this in Congress, and it's a massive problem. And it's not only, by the way, a problem, Tucker, of them trading their own stock. They can share this information or even sell this information to outside investors, and they can make bank on it as well.
I just don't understand why the Justice Department doesn't come down. I mean, that is so transparently corrupt. That subverts the whole idea of government. And again, if you tried that or I tried it, we would be perp-walked in handcuffs in front of the cameras.
Yeah, if you go back and, remember Tammany Hall, and the phrase that they used was legal graft. They did things that were graft, but they were technically legal. And in this particular case, it's very hard to prove a legal case of insider trading. The other problem is, look, who makes the rules? Congress makes the rules, and they have decided to exempt themselves largely from the insider trading rules. That applies to them, it applies to their spouses, and it applies to their staff. So, as the Politico report pointed out, Tucker, you've got hundreds of congressional staffers, and those are only the ones that are required to disclose their stock trades. You have hundreds of them trading stock every year in companies that they regulate. These could be companies that are subject to congressional action. These could be companies that are going to benefit from certain legislation. These are companies that could be hurt by certain pieces of legislation. And as you know, Tucker, oftentimes congressional staffers know even more about these details than members of Congress do, so they can really, really clean up in this area.
It just makes a mockery of our markets. I mean, the whole point of the markets in the United States is they're transparent, and all of us have roughly the same information. But if the people making the rules are profiting from those rules, how can this be changed? This is so offensive. How can people like this go to prison where they deserve to be?
Well, number one, they should just simply ban, if you are a congressional staffer or a member of Congress, ban the trading of individual stocks. Or number two, at least require a blind trust, which is not perfect. But that's the only way this is going to work. You've got to have a clear, bright line that says this activity is illegal. The problem is, on Capitol Hill, they're assuming that they're going to be able to get away with it because people aren't paying attention. It's one of those drain the swamp issues that's persistent and has got to be tackled directly.
It really does. Someone needs to overturn the tables in the temple, like tonight. Peter Schweizer, thank you for that. You've done so much great stuff on this subject. Thanks.